righty. Take it away, Barb.
All righty. Well, folks, um, my name is Barbara Barksdale, and I am the chair of the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds. And all I can say is thank you for joining us. We're going to have a wonderful, wonderful presentation tonight, and I thank our people who have put this together. That would be Bertha Jackman and also Crystal uh, Campton. Crampton. I'm sorry about that, Crystal. I mean, I'm
That's
messing
all
it up
right.
already. But I'm so excited because, we got all these people coming in. We have a lot of people that are still coming in to the room. And it's going to be just one of those moments where you're going to have something to learn, something to share, and something to even ponder over. And you're just going to have a great time. So I'm going to move it right on forward so that we can stay on time, be on time. And if you have something that you want to say, either raise your hand or get it into the chat, and Crystal will give you a little bit more information about that. But welcome to the quarterly session of the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds. Crystal?
Hello, everyone. We're going to do a little housekeeping. We're going to keep our cameras off and our microphones on mute so we can focus on our speaker today, which is Dr. David Trowbridge. I'm going to introduce you to one of our board members, which is Miss Bertha Jackman, who's going to do his introduction. So we thank you guys for joining us, and we hope you enjoy. Leave comments in the chat so we can ask the questions. And then when he is done his presentation, everyone can turn their cameras on and then we can answer questions. So enjoy, everyone. Bertha?
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm introducing Dr. David Trowbridge. He's a PhD from Kansas at 2008. He is the William T. Kemper Associate Research Professor of Digital and Public Humanities at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. As part of his research and teaching, Trowbridge uses technology to connect people to history. As part of that effort, Trowbridge authored A History of the United States, a textbook published under a Creative Commons license and available to students and the public in various formats. In 2013, Trowbridge began to work on Clio, a website and mobile application that connects people to nearby history and culture. Clio is free for everyone and has grown to include over 35,000 articles on individual landmarks and over 1,700 walking and virtual tours of museums and history sites, including cemeteries, parks, and audio tours of neighborhoods. Dr. Trowbridge.
You were on mute, Dr. Talbridge.
I am. Okay, here we go. It's good to be here. If you would have told me like 14 years ago I was going to make a mobile app, I wouldn't have believed it. I'm a history professor. This all started as a pedagogical project. I wanted my students to understand that history is a process, and you really don't understand that until you've done the process. So I said, tell me about a place that matters to you. And that grew into what became to be known as Clio. Clio was the ancient muse of history. And so we said, our phone knows where you are, so it could tell us the history of where you are. And if the ancient muse of history was with us, how would she reach us? And well, we all have these rectangles on us all the time, and they know where they are. So that was the idea. And since that point in time, there's about 1,700 museums, libraries, historical organizations that have used this platform to do something really cool in their own community. Completely free and nonprofit. I started a nonprofit at the very beginning because I didn't want it to be controlled by a university or beholden to any kind of financial plan. I just loved the idea of taking something that my phone tells me I'm right all the time. And so it becomes a mirror. And I want it to be a window. So that was the idea. If librarians ruled the world, what would smartphones do? How could they make us smarter? Clio.com was taken, big law firm. So I wasn't about to get that URL. So I bought theclio.com in 2012 for, let's see, maybe about 12 bucks. And we were off and running. First version I made myself. Now it's all dependent on grants and donations. If I tried to do anything with the coding, I would probably break it. But here is an example of the mobile app, which it'll zoom here in a second. You can, maybe it's going to zoom in with the little blue dot. Come on, it'll do it. There we go. The little blue dot and those red dots are the historical sites near me. Works all over the United States. So you can travel around and learn and discover. So here's just some examples, walking tours. This was in the corner, that's Charlie Bird Parker, since I'm in Kansas City. This was part of a grant that Black Archives of Mid-America got. It was their grant. They got the money. They got the indirect costs. Clio's free. So they got to use all the money to pay young people and older folks to work together to build audio tours for African American history in Kansas City. And it worked out really well to see the young folks and old folks coming together. Older folks pretend they can't use technology, which I think is really savvy. If you're my age or older, you used computers back when it was a green screen and you had to write code into it. Literally, you had to write code to get it to do anything. But it was good to see the younger folks and the older folks working together to make the audio tours. And so that's just one example. There have been people who have made cemetery tours. I'll get into sort of details on sort of 12 years I've seen what's worked really well. So here's an example. I don't know if you're hearing it, but the chief of the tribe is narrating it. And you can walk through the cemetery and hear her voice at each stop. And because your phone knows where you are. And we've got, it can be really high tech if you want it to be, where you use geofencing, which senses exactly where you are. You can leave your phone in your purse or your pocket and walk through the cemetery. When you get near one of the places, the audio will either click on, or if you're hearing the audio from the previous one, it'll go into a queue until you're ready to hear the next one. Or you can control it manually. Makes no difference to me. You can even turn any digital tour into a PDF and print it out. I know there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who still print out Yahoo driving directions, and my learning objective is not to get people to change doing something that works for them. So you can print it out because that works. You can use it on a mobile app, or you can just use the website. It's both a website and a mobile app, because if it's only a mobile app, that means your first step has to be downloading an app. And nobody wants to do that until they know there's a reason and they trust it. So if you go to theclio.com, it works perfectly well. If you're using the mobile app in Apple or Android, it works a little better for being in a place like a cemetery, because your phone knows exactly where you are if you'll share your location. And then you can get that hyper accuracy where you'll go right to where the pin is, and hopefully that's within about 5 or 10 meters of that particular marker, so that you can actually find it without spending all day trying to look around. So Clio isn't specifically a cemetery app, but people have used it for that, along with hiking trails. We've got art walking tours for sculpture gardens. You can walk around. We've even made one for the airport, because there's art throughout the airport, and we figure you probably have an hour to kill and you've got earbuds and you should probably go for a walk. And so when you walk past the art, you can hear the artist. So it's been kind of cool to see how people have used it over the years. Okay, so it's grown. There are now 43,000 articles in Clio, all tied to landmarks, historic buildings, monuments, markers, and sometimes places where there is no marker. Some of my favorite entries say, it's just a parking lot now, but if you were here in 1912, you'd be standing in the lobby of the Imperial Hotel, and then go on to tell you the story and how it's connected to the history of the town. And it's kind of addictive. So And yes, I do believe they are recording this. Let's see. There's 43,000 individual entries. You can have text, audio, and images. It will do text to speech, or you can actually drop in an original audio file. And so that works really well. The text always has to be encyclopedic and third person because it's just you don't know who's talking to you, so it's just kind of odd if it's not. But the audio, the speaker can identify themselves. Um, Usually after a quick, word or two to help the people understand the who, what, when, where, why, how, and then they can introduce themselves and say, I'm really glad to be telling you the story of this historic theater. You see, I was part of a group in 1987 that saved it from the wrecking ball. That works really well after a quick introduction. And then at that point, no one hits the stop button. They want to hear the rest of the story. So you can explore anywhere in the country and actually internationally in a few places where they've used Clio. You can, if you're using the mobile app, it can be hyper accurate where you're at. If you're just on the website, it doesn't know when your laptop is moving around. It just knows where your laptop is reporting its location. So the mobile app works really well for the in-person experience. So if you're making a cemetery tour, people can explore it on the web before they go. They can print out directions. They can print out any of the information. If they want to be guided exactly to the location of each headstone, they would really want to have that mobile app so they can see the blue dot where they are, the direction arrow for where they're headed, and the red dots for where whatever point of interest is. You can follow a specific route, but you don't have to. That's really pretty key for a lot of things like downtowns. We all have great intentions when we go travel. I'm totally going to go do a walking tour, and you may run out of time, but everybody goes to lunch. So just open the app, share your location, and on your way to lunch, if there's Clio entries and you're near them, you can hear the story behind the buildings and the markers on your walk. And that's been really key. If you care about people, you go where they are. And so I've tried to make it as simple as possible and make it to where people can choose how they want to experience it. So these are just some images of Clio. In the bottom is the mobile app. You can see the one in the bottom right corner. That's an art walking tour. And you can just walk and hear. We made that blue arrow for accessibility for those with limited vision. You don't have to have it on. It can be kind of extreme after a while, but it looks like it's this huge blue arrow pointing you the way you need to go and telling you how far until you get to the next landmark. And these are our girls in Washington, D.C. using it to explore. It's smooth enough. You can just hand the phone to the kids and let them be in charge, which is pretty clutch if you have kids. Play with the mobile app, hand the phone to the kids in the back seat, let them play Stump Dad or Stump Grandma as you're driving around. When do you think that building was made? And about the third or fourth thing they'll click, they'll say, hey, Grandma, can we go see this? And, just play like, well, I guess if you really insist. So it's a website and it's an app. It's theclio.com, not Clio.com. And if you're looking for it in the App Store, the first thing you're going to see is Clio legal software because it's a huge company. If you put Clio in your guide to history, you should be able to find it in the app stores, or there's a direct link to the app stores in the website. It's completely free. So because of that, 1,700 organizations, most of which don't have any money, have been able to make a walking tour or a trail or individual entries. Some have been able to use a little bit of money to pay staff or freelancers. At least 100 have gotten a grant. And this is what I get really excited about. A State Humanities Council grant might be $5,000, $10,000. That is not going to be enough to pay a developer or pay a company. Plus, you'd have to pay them every year. And nobody's got that kind of, no one has that kind of resources in my world. So Clio is free, full stop. So you don't have to pay an app developer. And it's sustainable over the last 12 or 13 years through grants and donations. In fact, it just keep getting better. Let's see. We had a question. I can go ahead and take those as we go. I'm fine with that. Would we prefer to do them at the end?
We would prefer to do them at the end.
Okay, we'll do them at the
Thank
end.
you.
No problem. Let's see. So completely free. So most of these are sort of DIY model, but you can hire a freelancer. You can pay staff. You can get a grant. Every once in a while, an organization wants a new feature that doesn't exist. Reach out to me. We'll figure out how much that costs. We'll include it in the grant, and then we'll put it in Clio, and that feature will be available for everyone. For example, a organization I'm working with wanted Clio to translate into 8 languages. They got a grant. I got a quote for what it would cost. And we just last week launched it, where there's a translate button in the 2 text sections, the introduction section and the backstory section. You hit translate, you choose the language, and it translates it into German, Arabic, Portuguese. There's like a list of 8 languages. And it will also turn it into audio in that language. That was their priority. We got the grant. We made it work for their organization, but we made it work for all 43,000 articles in Clio. If you sign up as an organization, you are now the facilitator and the gatekeeper of all of the entries that will have the name of your organization on it, as well as the name of the author. I'm a historian. I cite my sources. I want people to know who made it. There's also some self-interest there. 43,000 articles. I don't want to get emails on 43,000 articles saying you didn't cite my book. I still get some of them, but it'll say comes from the Johnson County Historical Society, and it was written by Heather Johnson. And then if there's something you wanted to add, or if there's a mistake, or a lot of times, sometimes it's just you turned a number around. It's 1896 and you wrote 1986. That way, the author and the organization is there. They can reach out to them and let them know. But mostly, it's just so they get credit. They get credit for their work. And they said, I had no idea our local museum did walking tours. I had no idea our library had a local history section with all this information. So when you sign up as an organization, and that's how most of the entries come in, you're able to control everything you create. It'll have the author's name and the organization. And you can actually see in your organizational account, one person's in charge. They can see all of the things that people in that organization are working on. They can edit, they can publish, they can retract, and they can delete as needed. This is vitally important. I am a full-time history professor. I have no staff. I just made this thing, put it out in the world to try to help people. So I had to make it be able to be something very simple that people can do on their own. Average age of a Clio author is in their 70s. All right. So this whole I can't use technology thing, again, I'm not going to bust you, but I know it's not true. Anybody who's my age or older knows at one point these devices are not getting harder, they're getting simpler. But I can't wait till I'm old enough to where I can just make my grandkids do all the work for me, and I'll pretend not to know anything about technology. But I'm just telling you this to say, I know you can do it. I've been doing this for 12 years. There's a learning curve like any new piece of software technology, but you can figure it out. There's guides, there's videos. I actually wish it was a little harder so people would use the guides, because there's some good advice in there along the way about what works. Okay, here's where it gets kind of complicated, but really cool. Individual entries, those are for landmarks. But you can actually build a tour inside an individual entry. So there can be an individual entry for a cemetery. And then within it, there can be what we call contributing entries that live within it and form a walking tour within that cemetery. And the really important and really useful thing is, in this slide in the bottom right corner, you see pin number 1 in red. That is an entry for an art gallery. Inside of it are all these green pins, which is their walking tour for the art. But because those only show up in that entry number 1 for the art gallery and the art walking tour, you don't have to keep repeating the story, explaining what this is. They'll only see them when they're taking the walking tour. So you're not sort of overwhelming people. You think about a cemetery, if you had 20 individual articles for internments, it could kind of be overwhelming. And they wouldn't quite know, how are these all connected? So there'll be one entry for the cemetery that you can make, and then inside of it, you can make the walking tour for all of for the graves. So a standard entry is a standalone one that you can see just on its own. The contributing entries can live within one of those to make a walking tour within it. And so museums have made this for walking tours of their museum. Cemeteries have made this for walking tours inside of it. We got hiking trails, all those kinds of things. Now, the Clio entry itself starts off with an introduction. Think of this as one paragraph: who, what, when, where, why, how. Get them the basics, things they have to know about this cemetery, historic hotel, etc. After that, you can get what we call the backstory. This is usually 3 to 6 paragraphs. Tell them the rest of the story. Start over. Give them the more context. They got the first paragraph, the who, what, when, where, why, how. They know when the cemetery was created. They know the essentials. The backstory can say some of the fascinating stories that are connected to it, the preservation story, etc. There is an additional option inside of there to create what's called a extended backstory. This is if you really wanted to go into a lot more detail, but you didn't want to scare everybody off with 5 pages at the start. I've been teaching history for a long time. If you start with 5 pages, you kind of lose people. So you can sort of think of this as sort of a layered approach. One intro, introduction, the basics, 3 to 6, hook them, 3 to 6 stories on that backstory. And then you really want to go into a lot more detail. It can all be there in that extended section. This view here in the top right corner is an example of what it looks like when you start an organization. And you can see all the people in your organization and what they're working on. And these are active tabs. You can see which ones are active, which ones are submitted for your review. If you're in charge of your organization, you get to be the one that vets them. And the ones that are saved as draft, those are the ones they're still working on, or ones that you deleted because maybe it was a duplicate. So on the website, there are templates, there are guides, and there's videos. I've tried to make this as simple as possible so that people can make awesome things in their town. Here's a rack card that you can get at the tourism organizations for totally free. Some images. The bottom right corner, that's an organization that made a civil rights walking tour. I found out about it 2 years later on Twitter because there's 1,700 of them. So I don't really track what all is going on. There in the middle, you can actually have like a little banner saying this was made by our organization with an active link to your website so people can learn more about you. If people learn about their historical societies, their cemeteries, their museums, their libraries from a walking tour, that's a good day for a historian. You can also include links to books, websites, videos. It's designed to drive people to places where they can learn even more. A little more complicated, but you can see on every Clio entry the version history and see who has changed what. So Clio's not a wiki in that you can't just randomly make changes. You have to be approved to do it. Or you can make a suggestion that the organization then can review and approve. And that's been helpful. Most times it's just a typo that you'll never see. Every entry in every tour has its own URL. That's a web address. There's also a button to create a QR code. So you can stick those on signs. And that's true for the tours. That's true for for whatever. There's a button on every tour to turn it into a PDF. And then you can print it. You can save it. You do not need to own a device. Accessibility has been really key to me. That giant arrow that points people the way, we made that before Google did. Last week, I was actually at Google's headquarters doing a project with them, but we beat them to that technology. Now they use it, and theirs is better. But that was one of those things that was a real priority to me because a lot of people have very limited vision. If you remember Google Maps about 6 years ago, you always had to like walk the wrong direction first to figure out which way, you come out of the subway and you have no idea which way is north. So we made this arrow that would just point the way. And ever since that time, I think everybody else has got that same technology. You can even download these for offline use. I was in West Virginia when we made this. We had hiking trails. You could download the tour. You obviously had to have web access when you downloaded it, but you could download it in advance, go to the middle of nowhere with no cell coverage, and you would see a blue dot where you were and the red pins where you were, where you go. And so you could hear the history and the ecology as you walked the hiking trail. Probably most important, the you could figure out where your car was afterwards with no cell coverage because you parked your car where pin number 1 was. All right. So here's just another view of if you sign up as an organization. This right here is what you'll see, the name of your organization and the entries that they're working on. In this case, these are draft entries that people were working on. And when you're ready, you can hit the button and make them go live. Once you create an organization, people can hit this institutional login button and they'll create entries that are drafts that you then, as the head of the organization, can edit, publish whenever you're ready. So that's, I hope, a good introduction. And let's do questions, and I can also do any kind of live demo. Yeah. Okay, for organization site, is easier to create cemetery, individual entry, family plot, graves. First create one entry for the cemetery, and then you can go back and create entries for individual plots that are historically significant. I would never try to do like an entire cemetery. It would just overwhelm people. But you could sort of have a link to someplace where all of that data is, but sort of have a walking tour of some of the highlights. And then you could, of course, have a guide that had more information. But one entry for the cemetery, and then you can go back and create entries for individual ones. And then once you've made all those, it's really easy. You hit this button that says create a tour, and it'll just say, oh, what kind of tour do you want to make? And you're like, well, I want to make a walking tour. And then you can pick where you want to put it. And I'm just going to pick somewhere where I know there's a lot of entries, right there in the middle of the city. And it says, great. Okay, we're thinking about it. Here are the entries nearest you. And so this would be, for example, you already made the entries for all the graves. You just start picking those. In these case, we're downtown, so it's just picking the entries we have there. And I just randomly picked them. Of course, we're not in good order right now. That's stop number 1. 6 is over there. Well, that's no good. 6 should be number 1. All right, we dragged it over. Now it's number 1. 4 should be number 2. That's pretty good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we hit the next button. Give it a name, a description. You can add an audio track if you want. You can always do that later. It's live. Someone could take that walking tour. Except for I just deleted it because it wasn't a particularly good one. Let's see. If you create a walking tour for a separate organization, can you transfer being the facilitator? What you can do, anytime you edit an entry, it will show up in that organization's account. So anything, so for example, if you're the Johnson County Historical Society and there's a bunch of Clio entries in your town that are great, you can create some new ones for ones that don't exist yet, but you can just sort of edit, add maybe photos to the ones that are. And if you've your organizational account will show all of the ones you've worked on right there, whether you created them or not. And so that's kind of a good way to do that. You can always change the login credentials and change the name of an account if you need to. But the entries and the tours will always be tied to the original creator, which is vitally important because that way they control them. There is a button that makes it to where you can make it to where absolutely no one else can suggest an entry or suggest an edit. That's been kind of important for a couple Native American tribes where they just don't even they want absolute complete control. I always tell people though, for the most part, don't check that button because if people make a suggestion, you have to approve it before it will go live, and chances are it'll be helpful.
Okay. I think those are our only two questions sent on the chat, but it looks like Maxine Cook has raised her hand. So Maxine, if you maybe want to unmute, you can ask your question now.
Hi, good evening. My question is, and I may have missed it, when entries go into this app, who is able to change the details and how does that get approved? Is it from the original owner of the account?
Yeah. So a historical society creates an account. They create an entry. It's theirs. Now I can edit them. I can't edit 40. There's 43,000 of them. But only people that, so when you create an institutional account, you as the admin have your own login credentials, and then you can create a shared credential, a different one for people you trust in your organization, and they can create draft entries. So if you're the Johnson County Historical Society and you run it, you create the Clio account, you are the facilitator and you are the gatekeeper. However, you've got 12 staff and volunteers. You create a shared login credential that they then can log into Clio and create draft entries. And they'll show up in your account. You have to approve them though. Until you do, if they're submitted as draft, no one sees them. If they've submitted them for review, they'll have a banner that's saying this one's awaiting review. I added that feature in there to sort of gently nudge the administrator, because sometimes the administrator is busy and the docents go and they make a really great walking tour and they're salty because that administrator hasn't looked at it yet. So it kind of is a gently nudge, like I was still waiting for the head of the Johnson County Historical Society to approve it. And then okay, yeah, I better go in there and do it.
Great, thanks. Okay, we have a Regina whose hand is raised. Regina, if you want to unmute, ask your question.
I don't have a question. Just two of us asked for a live demo.
All right, well, let me create an entry. We'll do that live. So this is, you can see exactly where I am. This is the entry that happens to be nearest me is a cemetery. I didn't plan that. You can see a Google Street View of the cemetery and the markers, images. Here is that one paragraph introduction. And then here is 4 paragraphs of more information, sources, and links to organizations, all kinds of other things.
David,
Yep.
this is Barbara. Can you just slow it down just a tad bit?
Sure.
Because you are like whipping through this.
Sure.
Slow it down just a moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one entry, an introduction. This one has original audio too, so you can actually hear a human talking about this. It's connected to the site. You can add images, and here's the rest of the story, along with sources and links to more information. So I'll show you how to create an entry. I always use the same place when I'm doing a demo, so I remember to delete it. All right, so I put in a zip code, address and zip code, but I could also put in latitude and longitude. That might be real helpful for cemeteries since the graves don't have addresses. So, if I change this, it'll put the pin somewhere else.
David, we do have a question on the board. It says, this is from Dusty. I'm sorry, to her. I'm sorry, Miss Dusty. I created a Clio profile last year under my name rather than the organization. Should I delete and create a new profile? Can my current one be changed?
Yes. Send an email to clio@theclio.com with the name of your email address and the name of your organization. And I can go back in, or you can delete it if there's not already content. If there's not already content, you could totally delete it and create it again, but you could also just send an email to clio@theclio.com. So yeah, you can put in an address, you can put in GPS coordinates, you can also just put the pin wherever it should go. And you can fine tune this later. This is going to be Very important for a cemetery walking tour, right? Because you got to be real close. So the next thing it shows you, it says, okay, you've entered this blue dot as the location, but we want to make sure that there's not already a Clio entry for the landmark you're trying to create, because that would be very confusing for users if the county courthouse had two competing Clio entries. So it'll say, if this is what you're trying to do, you can review or improve the existing entry by clicking on the button right there. But if you're saying, nope, it's none of these, this is a totally different one, you can hit the next button. So if you hit the review, you could review the existing entry and improve it, or create the new one. So give it a title. I'm going to pull up some text from something else. Give it an introduction. We'll say, well, you know, this doesn't quite look like the exact right spot. It's really close. I can fine tune the location. So it's put it right there, Central Mass, but it should be right here. And not only should it be right there, it should be facing this direction at this angle. So if you used Google Street View, and you can actually use Google Street View for a cemetery and put the actual locations of graves, you can do that. For the most part, though, it will only include what Google Street View already has, which might be a giant black screen because there's nothing in the middle of a cemetery. There's no Google Street View image. If that's the case, if this screen is black instead of exactly what you want, you just click this off and there won't be Street View at all. But we'll say that's perfect, so we like it. And here we're going to give you just some generic text. We can add sources. There's even a citation helper. So we'll say this was a book. And you can just put in as much information as you want. Publisher. Very reliable press when universities misspelled. And it will format it for you. You want an image? That's pretty easy. Just grab an image. This is Christmas a few years ago. Images have to be under 10K, just because we can't have just really massive images. It'll start to get clunky. So it's in Clio now. You can always improve it. Say, you know, actually, I think it should be slightly more this direction. And you can see Google Street View moved. But again, if you don't have Google Street View, just disable it. For a lot of cemeteries, you probably won't have Street View for the others. Say you just wanted to save it for later, hit the save for later. It's in Clio now, but only you can see it if you hit save for later. And you can also delete, and it's gone.
Okay, thank you. We have a few more questions in the chat. We have one from an owl. Can you incorporate drone footage into a walking tour?
You can, for video is a huge file. And since we compress this so it can be on people's phones, you can link video. So you could have drone footage, throw it in any of the Vimeo or YouTube, and then you could take the link. Clio's built to accept links from YouTube and Vimeo. It will look, it'll be embedded. It'll look like it's native and lives there, but it will actually be living on YouTube or Vimeo, so that we're not taking up a whole lot of, every app takes up a certain amount of space on people's devices. We can really compress images. Video just those get to be huge files pretty quickly.
Great. All right. We have a question from Jennifer Henderson. What if an unrelated individual has already created an entry for a location, but as the organization, you want to be able to control the content for the entry? Does an organization get preference over an individual, or are there just two competing entries for the same location?
So you can edit the existing entry. Um, just be sure to respect what's already there if it's good. But if there needs to be stuff added, I've been doing this for 12 years. Please, please do not turn a Clio entry into an advertisement. It doesn't work. What really makes sense on someone's website doesn't make sense as a third party article usually. So, but you can edit it and you can improve it. I've seen organizations copy and paste their mission statement over the introduction. And they'll just say, well, we worked really hard on it. And your mission statement belongs on your website. What belongs on Clio is, located inside the historic Johnson building, which was constructed in 1832. For the last 40 years, this has been home to the Johnson County Museum. And then the story of the museum, historic hotels, don't turn it into an ad. Don't tell me about thread count. Say, this is located in what used to be tell the story of the bank that used to be there and how presidents slept there and all those kinds of things. Fun and engaging, factual, of course, and then a link to your website to learn more along with visiting hours and all those kinds of things. Sometimes entries were made by students and they need a little TLC. This started as a pedagogical project. And so there are 500 universities that have used this. I love my students. The thing that they came up with is the best thing they've ever written. Doesn't mean it's perfect. You should see the first draft. But yes, you can edit existing Clio entries.
Great. We have a question from Christy. Are you able to post the narrative without the sources and add them afterward?
You can, but be sure to have at least one source there for just basic credibility. I'll show students two different articles, one that has properly formatted sources and one that just has URLs. And I'll say, which one do you trust? And it's night and day, even though they're the exact same sources. It's just that level of how do we know? And I'm a historian. And so I always love to make sure people know about, we got this in an archive. We found this at a museum. We found this in a library, so that they know, people are passionate. Yep. So when there's local myths, include them, but identify them. For example, I just finished a project for our historic Union Station. There's a story over the last century about bullet holes in the side of a building coming from the Kansas City Massacre, which was a vitally important history. They can't be bullet holes. They've even done ballistic testing. But the myth tells you something about important because it's persisted for 100 years. And so I'll talk about, for 100 years, people have told the story of the Kansas City Massacre through these holes. And with that one, I just don't have the heart to, because grandparents have put their fingers in their holes when they were little and told them, this is the bullet holes from the Kansas City Massacre. But a story that's been told a bunch of times, there's usually something about it. I was in Appalachia for 10 years. We had all kinds of stories. I mean, anyone who discovered a cellar thought they found an Underground Railroad site. But there is some truth behind a myth in that people feel so connected to the stories that they retell it. So identify them. For example, haunted stories. Never say something's haunted directly, but you can say there is a legend associated with this site, and chances are there is something. There's no haunted story where Old Man Johnson died at 99 years old of natural causes, surrounded by his loving wife and children. There was something haunting that happened there. And so you can tell that story, but never directly say the myth is true, but acknowledge it and share the truth behind it.
I don't know if you answered this yet or not. I'm sorry if I missed it, but a follow-up question from Jennifer Henderson. Does the individual still own it, being the listing that you discussed, and then has to approve the organization's edits?
So in that situation, if you're the organization, you can sign up as an institutional account, and that institutional account, the administrator of it, they have direct editing privileges in Clio. I've rarely had to take that away, because it's just it's a series, and you can actually see the version history. So if it's an organization, they can directly edit an entry from an individual and they can change it. I just ask, respect what was there. If it's good, add, improve. If it's wrong, change it. I'm a history professor. I live for details. I've had to be pretty relaxed about my natural default mode because this thing has grown to 43,000 entries, but it gets better every day, and we have the capacity to get things right. Just, people have to say, oh, things on the internet aren't true. Yeah, things in folders aren't true either. Something written by the Historical Society in 1922 isn't necessarily right. But we have the power now to get it right and say, according to this, this is what it says. And Clio entries shouldn't be thesis driven anyway. My learning objective isn't to get people to think the way I do. I want them to love learning. And so you can say, this source says this, and this source says this. Um, yeah. Let's see what else. Property owners. Property owners, they can feel however they want. It's a free country. You can publish what you want on the internet. Now, identify it as private property and tell people to respect them. Clio entry, people who are using Clio to go discover history are just good people by default, and they do not want to trespass on private property. So identify it as private property. But if you buy the home that's connected to Steve Jobs' garage, you know what you're getting. If you buy a historic home on the National Register, that information's already on the web, and people are going to stare at your house. You knew it when you bought it. For example, we've had walking tours in historic plantations where they don't want us to do it. Well, I know you got to sell weddings. I can empathize with that, but you don't tell the story of slavery on your website, and we're going to.
Thank you. Folks, do you have any more questions for our speaker? If so, put them in the chat right now. Otherwise, it looks like that was all of our questions.
I was asking people to turn on their cameras so we can see who we're talking to, and our presenter doesn't just see black screens.
That's okay.
Someone told me to go first, so here I go. Hello, everyone. There we go.
Thank you, Al. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm a history professor. I live for getting the details right. What I love about Clio is it gives us a chance to do that. What I love about history is we can move past our default mode. The greatest three words you're ever going to hear in any relationship is "I was wrong." All right, been married 15 years. I say those other three words without thinking about it. But she's never heard me say I was wrong without really meaning it. And history is great because you can say, I didn't know that. I hadn't seen that source. I've published articles in the Journal of American History. You get an email a week later after you publish, and it's something like, dang it, had I found that source, I would have totally included it. Wish I would have. I could be kind of defensive because of that. But the nice thing with these digital sources is you can add more sources. And people have done that over the last 12 years. I've got incredible stories of people making connections over this desire to get things right.
I had a question. I posted it and I don't think I used the right term. I said, could you show us how to make a sub account or category or what? I don't know what you called it, but we have
Contributing entry.
the contributing.
Yep.
Can you show us how
Sure.
from a cemetery,
Yep.
then how you would do that?
Okay. Let me just pull up an existing one. Okay. So here is one that already has them. And so you can see them all right here. And so these all appear within the walking tour. Let's go ahead and get rid of one, and then we'll get it back. It's going to search for nearby. Let's see, that's not quite it. So we'll just grab that one, and it's at the end of the tour. So yeah, you just, once you create an entry, you can click improve this entry, or for example, let's pick a cemetery that doesn't have one. This is just a straight up entry. It doesn't have a tour inside of it.
Yeah, let's just start from scratch.
So we can.
And again, could you go just a little slower?
Sure. So this is, I'm logged in. I'm in the entry. I can scroll to the bottom, create a tour inside this entry. And now it'll say, okay, do you want to create a new sub entry from scratch, or do you want to add an existing one? So we'll create a new sub entry from scratch. We'll leave that blank for now. Give it a little bit of content. Now we can sort of really fine tune it and say, yeah, it's actually right here. Now it's there. Now we can add another one. And we'll leave that blank for now. We'll say grave site 2. Give it another bit. And let's fine tune the location by zooming in. We'll say this time it's right over here. Submit for review. We're building a tour. And if we liked it, gravesite 1, gravesite 2. So the next time I open up that entry, look, it has a tour in it. To remember to delete this later. And if all of this seems overwhelming, guides, videos, and rubrics. You can learn anything on YouTube, right? You got something wrong with your car, you need to figure out, okay, I need to replace a light in a 2005 GMC Acadia. Someone's got a video showing you how to get in to put that light in there. Same thing here. These truly do walk you through each step where you see the screen and you can pause, rewind, etc. And there's a little bit about kind of just some things to think about. How well is known Clio? How well is Clio's growing? I don't have an advertising budget. Here's how it grows. An organization makes a walking tour. They put a link on their website. They share it on social media. And now people learn about it. Which the great thing is no one in Boise knows Clio exists until the Boise Historical Society makes a bunch of walking tours. But so yeah, I actually just had dinner with the former director of the American Historical Association. He was like, "Oh, David, I had dinner with the mayor of DC last night. He totally like pulled up his phone and is like, Jim, you got to try this app called Clio." So it's kind of cool to see it grow, but it's one of those things where, because it's free and nonprofit, paid marketing is just not in the books. It's organizations make things and then they share it with other people, and then people discover it and they share it with others. We get far more web traffic than we ever get mobile app traffic because it's Google's world and we're just living in it. Once you make a Clio entry, it's on the web, which means it's going to show up as a search result.
Well, this is awesome. I can't wait to try it myself down here in this little town of Stilton, not only for the cemetery, but how it connects to the borough of Stilton as well as the city of Harrisburg. So I see there's a whole lot of wonderful possibilities from this to expand in more ways than one. So thank you for sharing all your information. I, yes, Mr. David, no, Professor David, you are fast. But I'm so glad that you have these here wonderful YouTube things. The YouTube links are out there on in the chat. I know that Renee had posted them there, and this here video will be placed out there for people to see, actually on YouTube again. And we're going to. I'm going to back out so that Crystal and Bertha can take over, but I just have to say thank you so much because this
Oh
was
yeah.
really, really great information that is going to make an impact on a whole lot of lives around the state and the country. I see that there was people from Delaware and North Carolina and all over PA here and there, and I'm sure that this here video will be seen by many, many more to come. So, and it's good to see some of the faces out here. Dr. Berg, how are you? He's Dr. Berg is one of our board members, and there's Bertha Jackman, who is one of our board members, along with Crystal. And they're Bertha and Crystal have been working hard on trying to get this organized. And then we have Jeannie. Jeannie, I can't see you, Jeannie, but I know you're out here somewhere. You're probably on page number 2. But and Renee. So uh, thank you to my board who are awesome, awesome, awesome people, Joe Beckton and everybody else. So, Crystal, I'm going to let you and Bertha finish this up so that people can sit back and ponder about this wonderful presentation.
Well, we thank you guys for joining us tonight, taking time out of your busy schedule. We really like to thank Dr. Trowbridge for his creation and him sharing, because when somebody creates something, sometimes they want the residuals or the royalties, and he's just giving it because he loves history. Dr. Trowbridge, some of our comments were great presentation. Thank you. This is awesome. One is I'm not going to call names because people know who they are. It says, thank you for the presentation and for developing this application. It is really great tool to help get history out there in the hands and minds of the public. Thank you again. Wonderful information. It can be used everywhere. Thank you. Clio seems like an amazing program. Can't wait to use it. Thank you so much for providing this app for free. Very impressive app. Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Let's see here.
That's great to hear. And I built it to solve a problem because, there's all these historical sites, museums, libraries that have been wanting to do this. And at this point, Clio's about $500,000 worth of code. So that's just unreachable. And it's also commercially unviable to spend that much amount of money. I mean, what we got to charge people? I don't want to do it. So I just thought, let's make it free so that people can make cool stuff in their town and they don't have to worry about sustainability and glitches and all the things that nobody wants to deal with.
Okay, let's see here. Bertha, do you want to say anything? We're going to wrap this up.
Yes, I just want to say, Dr. Trowbridge, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. This was absolutely wonderful. And for the very fact that it is free is, I don't want to say unheard of, but it's a fabulous, fabulous gift to all those who want to do something and present something about history. I do have one question. I just now thought of it. Now, this is all over the United States. Is it in any other countries?
It is. It's really hit and miss. I always tell, because I'll have a professor that's doing French history, and I'll tell him, don't make 5 entries in Paris. You got to make at least 200. I'd rather have 0 because I can't get, so there are though, there are entries, there are places in the United States where it works really well. And there's places in the United States where there's not very many entries. And there are a scatter number of countries. And we just added the auto translate feature, which I think will be really helpful. I know Puerto Rico used it recently, and they were actually more excited about having it in English because the markers are in Spanish and they're next to a cruise port. So it really solved a problem for them, that it could be in multiple languages.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Again, we want to thank everyone. Just really two quick questions. One said, David, is your Facebook in use? Doesn't seem like there are
Yeah, I'm
2026
behind.
entries. He's a little behind. Okay, so
Yeah,
that's
I
to
social
Renee.
media works, but when your product is free, it's like, oh God, every time I get this, I get like 5 emails. So I haven't updated we used Twitter a lot actively back when it was, you know, actually Twitter. Yeah, I need to post more things. But the beauty of it is though, local historical societies, I could always tell by the view count on Clio entries and tours, like, oh, they just shared it. Because it'll have like 500 views after, only getting a couple a day, and then one day it gets 500. You can tell, yep, they shared it. So yeah, our social media does work. I don't, I'm not as active as I used to be, but it's really designed to make it to where other people can share.
Well, I think we need to end on this note. It says, fantastic. I've used Clio when traveling. So excited. I can do one. It says, I can do one of our community historical sites in North Carolina. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
So
Yeah.
again, we thank everyone for coming on. We hope you go to our website and just help us donate, help us keep continuing to do what we're doing, bringing these presenters that you might not have heard about to the forefront. So we really thank you, and you have a great night and be safe. Thank you, Dr. Talbridge.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good
Good night.
night. Thank you, everybody.